This is being hosted by the Putney Huddle, which was a political action group formed from the Women's March in 2017. We have participated in many actions on a state and local level, and on a town level, we helped write the original Robert's Rules guide to town meetings, which has since been amended and updated by Howard Fairman and Meg Mott. We have also organized many of these forums for local governance. We want to extend thanks to the Putney Public Library for loaning us a PA, the town clerk for helping us spread the word, the Putney Fire Department for hosting, BCTV for being here to record and air this for those who couldn't make it, and for helping talk me through all the tech issues, and the Vermont Democrats for loaning us their Zoom license so that we will hopefully have the capacity needed for this event. We also thank our town moderator, Meg Mott, for taking on the moderator role for this forum, the candidates for showing up and their desire to serve our community, and all of our elected officials for their efforts, and of course, all of you for showing up and voting.
Oh no, it's so
okay.
bad.
In a few moments, our moderator will explain the rules of engagement from her perspective and introduce our candidates. But just a little housekeeping from me first. Community comments on Zoom are shut off. I will be paying attention to the Zoom screen. When we get to the community questions section of this, you can raise your hand on Zoom, and Meg will alternate taking questions in person and on Zoom. I will unmute you when you are called on. You must have your name on the screen in order to ask a question. At the end of this forum, I will also share information on how and where to vote, and I will share information on the school board forum coming up on Monday. If you have any questions, you can email me at theputneyhuddle@gmail.com. I will respond to emails after this forum. Take it away, Meg.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, BCTV, and thank you, candidates, for running, and for Putney people to show up and watch our democracy in action. We are slated to go until 7:30, and the main purpose is for each one of you to get to know the candidates. So we have 3 candidates. Eileen Shute.
Eileen Shute, yeah.
But did I pronounce your last name correctly?
It's a hard CH, as in choo-choo train.
Shoot. I make that mistake every year at town meeting, and I always need to be corrected. Eileen Shute. Shoot. Fletcher Proctor, and Eileen is running for a 3-year seat. Fletcher Proctor is running for a 2-year seat, and Frank Harlow is running for a 3-year seat. So we do have a little competition here, which is always good for democracy. We want more ideas out there, different points of view, and this is going to give us an opportunity to consider different points of view in one head at the same time. I thought we might begin by asking each of our candidates to explain who they are, why they want to run, and we're going to go in alphabetical order by the person's first name. So Eileen, would you like to start?
Hi, I'm Eileen Shute.
Can everybody hear Eileen?
Can you hear me? Yes? Yes, you can? No, you can't? Sort of in the louder for those in the back.
Yes, please.
I grew up across the river in Henniker, New Hampshire, which has a similar type of governance, the select boards and town meeting. So only they do it upside down. I am on the select board at the moment. Currently, I am the chair. I am running because I believe in community resilience and vitality. So if re-elected, I will continue to support the 3 future Putney's task force's endeavors by agreeing to approve letters of support for grants, approving community events, and by supporting zoning bylaw changes or infrastructure improvements that make it easier for needed projects to come to fruition. Help develop Putney as a walkable, bikeable community by seeking out ways to improve our sidewalk network, work with the state to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety, and continue to promote the importance of a compact, mixed-use downtown. Work with our state legislatures to help funnel resources to small communities such as Putney for economic development, encourage out-of-the-box ideas from the community and our town employees, which will help solve big problems while saving taxpayer money. Continue to explore extra revenue sources beyond property tax for Putney's many initiatives, as well as maintaining existing services to help reduce the property tax burden. I believe in community engagement, so if re-elected, I will continue to champion government transparency and access, such as hybrid meetings, easily navigable websites, and other forms of community outreach. Endeavor to ensure that the public is able to express themselves to their select board in constructive ways. Help find community members willing to volunteer their time to move many of Putney's initiatives forward. Advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion so that all residents of Putney feel welcome and can be heard. I believe in climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resiliency. So if re-elected, I will continue to seek out ways in which Putney can decrease its dependence on fossil fuels. With dedicated volunteer help, seek out grant funding for green energy initiatives such as car chargers, heat pumps, solar panels, and more. Advocate for more alternative transportation, including more and better bus routes, commuter rail, increasing the use of cargo bikes, and safe access to walking and biking. Advocate for land use planning, which mitigates flooding in populated areas, hardens crucial infrastructure, and proactively reduces future risk and resources. Advocate for a compact mixed-use downtown with a strong economic base to minimize long-distance commuting, along with energy efficient housing for all kinds that works for the median income in Putney. And lastly, I believe in Putney. Whether re-elected or not, I will continue to wave to my neighbors while walking downtown, say hello in the co-op, the general store, the farmer's market, or the post office. Frequent our many small local businesses, attend the many great events put on by so many engaged and interesting residents throughout the year, hike our many beautiful trails and visit our many beautiful orchards, and be proud to call Putney my home.
Great, thank you, Eileen. And just for people who come in, we're hearing introductory remarks from each of our three candidates, and we will start taking questions, but not until each candidate has had a chance to introduce themselves. So Fletcher Proctor, would you like to introduce your candidacy to the voters of Putney?
Hi, I'm Fletcher Proctor. I'm probably sort of the new kid on the block since Patty and I just moved into our house on Old Depot Road in September. But we actually purchased the house in 1986, so we've sort of been circling Putney for a long time. And in fact, our moving in was the realization of a plan that we had from 1986 that way we would retire, or sort of retire to Putney, the last stage of our life in Putney. I'm a lifelong Vermonter. I tallied it up before coming here and realized that I've, for greater or lesser periods of time, lived in 10 different towns in Vermont. So, but the town I spent most of my time in was Westminster. And while in Westminster, I was heavily involved in elected positions. I was on the school board for 9 years. I was the moderator of the town meeting for 17. I was the town agent, such as it is, for better than 20. And I served on a prudential committee that, believe it or not, considered a sewage treatment plant for Westminster West, which luckily we came to the conclusion was a little bit of overkill and managed to bury that proposal. I'm a huge believer in participatory democracy, and that's really what brings me here tonight. There's also, it's sort of somewhat karmic payback. I wrote the petition to expand the select board to 5. So I was told at the time that that was going to come back to haunt me, and I guess it has. But that levity aside, I really believe in participatory democracy, and I believe that we need to participate in town government. And I've got obviously less direct and immediate experience than Eileen with the issues in town, but I have a lot of experience with how to work within town government. I've been attending select board meetings for the last couple of months to get an idea what the issues are in town. I'm still on the learning curve. I think there are definitely things to address. One of the most immediate, as you know, we just finalized the town plan. The Wyndham Regional just approved it, so it's now a done deal. But the next thing that ought to happen after you finalize your town plan is you ought to go through your zoning regulations and figure out whether they conform to the town plan and meet the needs of the town as it is now. I've had a lot of experience working with zoning regulations, so that's an area that I thought I could be useful right off the bat. Aside from that, I think it's just a matter of pitching in, really. And like Eileen, I hope to be open to suggestions from constituents, from the people of Putney. I know a lot of people in Putney because I've been practicing law here for 15 years. So a lot of people know how to find me and get my ear. So, I expect to be available and hope to be responsive.
Great, thank you, Fletcher. We're going in alphabetical order by first name, just to explain the sequence. Fletcher is running for a 2-year seat. Frank Harlow, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, my name's Frank Harlow, lifelong resident here, Putney, been born and raised here, have many generations of family here. Just looking to try to help out in town here. I have a wife and 2 young kids to grow up here in Putney. Been around the highway department, fire department my whole life. Been on the fire department for 24 years now. So just looking to help out in town and give some of my knowledge. I also run my own business in here in town. So I have experience with that, you know, management and stuff like that. So that's about it.
Great, thank you. And Frank is running for a 3-year seat. Do we have any questions for our candidates? And I'll go first to our audience here at the fire department. Yes, Laura Campbell.
Hi, I'm Laura Campbell, and I'm curious to know if I should be assuming that you're running for the 3-year seat, which will be the chair. I mean, this is my question is directed to you.
So I'm going to just repeat the question because sometimes people can't hear on Zoom. So the question is directed to Eileen and to ask, would that 3-year position, is that specifically for the chair?
So the answer is no, I'm running for a 3-year seat. The select board does a reorganization every time a new member is reelected. So the very first meeting after March 5th will be a reorganization meeting, and the select board will decide amongst themselves who will be the chair, the vice chair, and the clerk.
Thank you.
Great. Any questions online? I see no hands up on the magic screen. So we'll go back to real people.
Sorry.
I mean, not that the people online are not real people, but we'll go back to the 3-dimensional bodies that I can see. Any questions? Yes, Kate Dodge.
So, for those of you who don't know, my husband and I own Putney Mountain Winery. And my question is, there are other people who own businesses here. I don't know if they would be affected, but I'm interested in what you think of this new proposal for 1% local sales tax.
So the question for all 3 candidates is,
I'm not necessarily opposed to it, I'm just trying to get some thoughts about it.
so the question is for all 3 candidates, what do each one of you think about the proposed 1% sales tax? And this is coming from a business owner. So maybe I will go in reverse alphabetical order this time. Frank, what are you thinking?
I haven't really learned much about that, but I do know it's a thing. I know there's a lot of other towns. I know Brattleboro does it. I don't think, you know, as far as, you know, buying stuff as a business, definitely obviously costs you more, but I don't think it's, I think a lot of towns are going to that, so I don't think it's, I think it's probably gonna happen, I guess.
And can everybody hear the candidates? Do we need a mic for the candidates? Is it okay? Okay. Fletcher, what do you think about this proposed 1% tax?
Well, the information that I saw on it was that it wouldn't necessarily generate a huge amount of revenue, but it seems to me any source of revenue these days is useful to a town. I've been looking at the budget a lot recently, and I'm worried about where we stand financially. So, you know, the trade-off is always, particularly with Vermont towns that effectively border New Hampshire, is that our competitors don't have any tax at all on what they sell. So that's always an issue, but Putney isn't really a big center of that kind of commerce. It's probably more about restaurants and, you know, about the Gleanery charging an extra 1%. General store or Kate. Yeah, I'm not sure, when I looked at it, it didn't seem to me that it was the businesses that I was thinking of in Putney were gonna be seriously adversely affected. So if it's a way to pick up a little extra revenue for the town, frankly, I think the town could use it right now.
Eileen, what are you thinking?
So the select board has been struggling, and the town manager has been struggling with the rising costs of insurance, health insurance, and employee benefits. We want to keep maintaining good wages to retain our excellent employees in town. And yet, we're all taxpayers in town, and the funding our town municipal services on top of the 3/4 of our tax bill is actually the school. So our municipal tax burden has gotten unwieldy on top of the school burden. So the select board has been exploring ways on how we can spread the pain, I guess, in effect. And so this 1% local sales tax is one way to do that. The state actually gets 30% of that amount, so it is a very small amount of money that we may.
Can I pause? I'm sorry
yes.
to interrupt you. They're not hearing well on there. It sounds like Meg is the only one they're hearing well.
So
where
maybe
is
we
that?
should do the mic.
I do think we need
Yeah.
to do the mic and watch it squeal. This is the luck tonight.
Is it on?
It's not. You gotta push the button.
Oh boy. All right, which button?
Oh, all of mine tonight, but.
That's not where I was going with it.
Is this better?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Easy
I don't want-
does it, easy does it.
Yeah, right? Is this good? Okay.
The people on.
On Zoom, will you give a thumbs up if you
Can you hear me
it?
now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm not going to repeat my rambling on the 1% local tax, but in general, I support extra revenue sources for the town, wherever the state will let us glean those, because the property tax burden is becoming unsustainable.
Great, thank you. We have a question coming from online. Can we find out, Shayna, is it? Shauna, sorry. Here we go. Is Shauna, are you able to unmute yourself?
No, she wouldn't be, because that's the way this is going tonight, you know? Can we come back to her while I figure this out and take
Yeah.
a question in the room?
Shauna, we're gonna get back to you, because we're having a little technical difficulty, but we will not forget about you. We'll see if there's another question coming from the room. Laura Campbell has another. Is there anybody else who
I'll-
wishes?
Direct this question to anybody on the panel. Did you just say that once we tell our customers, if we're running a business, that it's a little higher than they expected, because we have a 1% increase, local tax, that the state is gonna get 30% of whatever that revenue is?
So let me repeat that question. There was a clarification, a question, which is if we go with the 1% tax, now, if we go with the 1% tax, is it true that the state would be taking 30% of that? Eileen has got an
The
answer.
answer is yes, the state will take a cut of anything that it can. So yes, the state will get 30% of that 1% and we get 70. And if you don't like that, you can talk to your state legislatures.
Where is it? Do either of the other candidates want to weigh in on that? Seems like a factual point. Any other questions from the three-dimensional people? Yes, and I'm sorry I don't know your name.
That's okay. My name is Cheryl Peterson Sprague. And I have a question for all of the candidates. It seems as though, not just in Putney, but in all small towns in Vermont, there are going to be some hard met needs, starting with the schools and trying to come back after the pandemic and all of the needs of the students. But we've got infrastructure in Putney that needs attention. We've got a lot of roads that need to be fixed after the serious flooding that we've had. We, really need sidewalks and some other things. So for each candidate, what do you see as the most pressing fiscal need that needs to be addressed?
So we have a question
Fiscal or
from the
physical?
floor.
Fiscal.
To all the candidates to see, what do you see as the most pressing fiscal need for Putney? I think we're going to start with Fletcher this time.
That's a good question, and I'm sort of reeling about it, but perhaps because it's the thing that I read most recently, that I think we really need to pay attention to the fire department and how manages the personnel here and what they're. I mean, it's a beautiful building. We've got some great equipment, but we're having real trouble getting people to participate in. I mean, it's dated, but I watched a video of Tom Goddard saying he couldn't necessarily get enough people on a truck before it rolled out of the station, which I found extremely alarming. It's probably a fiscal issue at base, but it's definitely an issue that needs some serious attention. Frankly, I'm also just waiting for the wrecking ball to land on what the school budgets are going to do, because the stuff that's coming out of Montpelier is just terrifying. In terms of what it'll do to our property taxes. My greatest long-term concern is just that people won't be able to afford to live in Putney. But that wrecking ball, I don't know what we can do about.
Frank, do you want to pick up on this question of Putney's most pressing need?
Yes, I'll agree. The fire department, definitely. And then also roads. I would agree with that. So take care of the stuff. Oops.
That button in the front there, one of those. Okay.
I think the battery might have died.
Stop it.
Hello?
I charged the battery last night.
Okay, we're back on Frank.
Yeah, so definitely roads and sidewalks and fire department and all take care of the stuff that, we need to take care of now. Instead of, take care of the old stuff before the new stuff, basically.
Great. Eileen, do you want to weigh in on this question?
Great, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So the school, obviously the school budget is terrifying, like Fletcher said. It's also somewhat out of our hands because the school budget is largely driven by the consolidated school district, but it also to some extent gets handed down from the state. And that is 2/3 of our tax rate. So as far as fiscal concerns, there are many. So the fire department is one, roads are another, aging infrastructure in general is another, water and sewer. There has been a lot of talk about possibly sharing services amongst towns to try to alleviate that issue with the fire department, and also just in general with zoning administrators. We already share a contract with the sheriff between us and Westminster. We share a animal control officer amongst us, Westminster, Dummerston, I believe, a couple other towns. That has been working for us. So I see a lot more of that, sharing services amongst small towns in order to get the things that we need to get done.
Great. Shauna, is it going to work this time? Yes. Go ahead. You may.
My question was more of a comment that I couldn't hear until candidates started using the mic.
Wow.
And I would also encourage the people who have questions to use the mic, or it's fine though if you repeat the question.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I repeat the questions. Thank you, Shauna. Yeah, we're sorry about that it was hard for people to hear. Any questions? I'm looking online one more time since I got a few from the floor. I see no hands up. So let's go back to the floor. Is there anybody here in person who'd like to ask a question? Candace.
I feel like a moron, but I don't have any idea what you're talking about with the school budget and the state. What are they telling us that we need to do?
So this is a question from the floor about raising concerns about some of these comments of what's coming down in terms of the school budget and what is the state asking of towns. Why don't we begin this time with Eileen?
So I'm not going to pretend that I'm up on the school budget complexities because I am not on the school board and I can only keep so much information in my head. So somebody else may have better information, but from what I understand, there was there was a bill last year that was attempting to create equity amongst towns, and that bill had unintended consequences, such that there's a prediction that we may have as much as 20% increase in our school budget. That's just a prediction. The schools are working on, and the legislature is also working on reducing that burden. But in general, the school budgets always go up because they also have aging infrastructure and they also need to retain their employees, and health insurance goes up every year. So they have much the same issues as a small town does with the same pot of money.
Fletcher, do you want to weigh in? Are people hearing me through the mic now? Okay.
I also heard the same ballpark, 20 to 25%. And it really makes me wonder, where the heck's the money going? That's a tremendous amount of money that they're going to suddenly be, where's it going? What are they proposing to devote it to? I don't, what happened in the last, I understand that during the pandemic, the finances got all wonky and all of that, but that's a huge increase. And I don't understand yet. I haven't gotten enough about the numbers to know where that money's supposed to be going. I'm suspicious that it's one of the I don't know what bill it's an unintended consequence of. I'm suspicious that the consolidation move didn't have, they told us it was going to save us money, and I think it may be doing exactly the opposite. But that's a whole lot of money going into a black hole as far as I can tell right now. It's true, healthcare costs go up, all those parts. I was on a school board for 9 years, and those parts of the budget that were totally out of our control, even then, it's been quite a while since I was on a school board, and we were having double-digit increases in our health insurance costs pretty much every year I was on the board, and we didn't feel like there was much we could do to stop it. But this just seemed stratospheric to me. So if it comes through the way the numbers they're threatening, I don't know how any of us are going to afford to keep houses.
Frank, do you want to weigh into this?
No, I don't have much to say about that because I don't know much about that.
We have a question from online. Janice Baldwin, you had your hand up. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay. This is taking this in a kind of different, more personal direction. This is, as I've observed, a huge learning curve in getting on the select board and coming up to speed in all the different town policies, procedures, committees, whatever. I'm curious if each of you would speak to one particular skill that you have that you think you'll bring to a 5-member board that works as a team.
Great question. And could everyone hear that about what are you bringing to the team? And we'll start with Frank.
I think I could bring a lot of knowledge that would come to, basically roads and fire department is what I have a lot of knowledge with. So I think that's where I would be good with coming up with ideas or answers.
Great, thank you. Fletcher.
Well, I got 45 years as a lawyer and small town practice. I know a lot about real estate. I know a lot about zoning. So those are areas I saw as strengths, and I know a lot about how laws and government work. So I thought those would be useful.
Eileen.
I'm a policy geek. So you might find me listening to state legislature committees while I do the dishes. So I have a lot of esoteric knowledge about the way not only local town government works, but also at the state level. I also am all for process and procedure. And that has, I think, helped us move the select board forward more efficiently in recent years. And I have experience being on the select board, so I just I'll bring that forward.
Great, thank you. We have another.
Actually, maybe I didn't word the question correctly. I was really interested, everyone there has interesting experience, but a personal quality. Working on a team takes more than knowledge and experience. It takes, different kind of personal qualities that everybody brings to it. And that was more my interest is what, coming to work as a team with people that you might not know or agree with, what do you think you can bring to it to make that work?
Okay. I've got one other person waiting on Zoom, but is that all right for you guys to give it a second?
Yeah, we answered the question wrong. I'll say that I have a really stupid sense of humor. So it does help move people closer to each other when you make a stupid joke. And in general, I have a thick skin, which is also essential on the select board. I haven't lost my cool yet.
Great. We'll go back down the line. Fletcher, yes.
It probably goes with being a lawyer, but problem-solving skills. I also, as I said, have a lot of experience with being on town boards and myself, so I haven't gotten into a fight with anybody yet. So managed to work things out.
And Frank, what personal qualities do you bring to a team?
Well, hopefully good listening skills, hopefully.
Okay, great. Do we do better, Janice? You give us a thumbs up. I don't see any hands up in the audience, but I do see one on the screen. So I may go back to the screen. Okay. Louise Garfield.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I have two questions. I'm looking at the town report and the pages of the appointed officials, and noting that many committee or commission members' terms expire next month. I'm wondering how the appointment process works and is transparent. So that's one question, and I'll save the next unless you want them both at once.
Is it related?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is it related, Louise?
It relates to the implementation of the town plan with all the vision and action steps and how everyone feels about that.
Okay.
There's the second question,
all right.
so
All right.
it's not related.
So the first question was about transparency, is that right?
Of the appointed officials.
The
of
appointed
everything from
officials.
Housing advisory to equity inclusion to recreation board
Got
and
it.
more.
Okay, so,
Continue on, do they have to say yes or no by a certain date? How do new people, say if I thought somebody would be excellent on a committee, how could I bring that to somebody's attention?
got it. Okay, maybe we'll handle one at a time. And the first, because it could be a little confusing, let's first look at this question about getting people on committees and how to handle that. Fletcher, do you want to start, and then we're gonna, because you haven't begun a trio yet for a little while.
This is still on? Well, I haven't had to implement the process, but as far as I know, it's a matter of publicizing the opening and encouraging people to volunteer. Unfortunately, we can't just grab them by the collar and drag them off the street. So it's a matter of getting people to feel enthusiastic about a position and getting them in. And at that point, I think any recommendations are welcome, but it's really the first and most important thing is to get people to volunteer for the committees.
Great, and Frank, do you want to answer that?
I think I would say the same, getting people to step up and run for things.
Eileen?
Yeah, so as far as procedure goes, we do have an appointment procedure. We worked on it this year because we found that we didn't have one. We found that out the hard way. And as far as reappointing people come March, generally what happens is Karen will send somebody an email who's on a current committee. Do you still want to be on this committee? And yes or no. And then she usually sends those to the select board as a slate. So we just usually just appoint everybody all at once. As far as openings are concerned, again, it goes to, people need to express some kind of interest before the select board. We have a policy in place where the boards that are, the current board members have an opportunity to weigh in on the prospective members to get a feel on whether they will work well with the current members. And then it goes before the select board to appoint those people at a regularly scheduled open meeting.
Great, thank you. Eileen, do you mind holding onto the mic and taking on the second question, which had to do with the implementation of the town plan, I believe.
Was that the question? That sounded like the question, yeah. So one of the things, as Fletcher mentioned, one of the very first things that needs to be done is modernizing our bylaws. You'll be happy to know that we expended $58,500 for that process this morning through ARPA funds. That's usually a process that is undertaken by the Planning Commission. So they're gonna move forward with that very soon. There's everything that we do should be driven by the town plan. So everything from sidewalks to roads to infrastructure, all of that is informed by the town plan. So in a sense, we're always using that document to inform our decisions.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, Fletcher, can you speak a little bit more into the microphone?
Sure.
Thank you.
And Sue Coakley, who's, I think, the chair of the Planning Commission, I think she also had sort of a list of action items that she was going to come at the select board with. So I think the select board will definitely have their marching orders soon.
Great, Frank.
I haven't actually read the town plan, so I don't really know much about that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? Oh, in the back, thank you. I forgot your name.
It's Heather.
Heather.
In about 3 weeks, we're gonna not have a fire chief. And that comes on the heels of the AP Triton report highlighting that there are inadequacies in staffing and in the quality of staffing. What is the select board, what do you guys think the select board should be doing to ensure public safety?
So we have a question from the floor about the fact that our fire chief, after a long service, will be stepping down. And there's questions from a recent report about the staffing, the quality of the staffing. Frank, you have the mic. Do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think what the first step is to, talk to the people on the fire department and find out who's willing to step up and that wants to do that role. And then the select board is gonna have to look at, if they don't think them people are qualified, about, putting it in the paper, putting it out to hire to see, who might want to step up to apply for it. So I think that's the first step.
You want to pass it to Eileen? And then we'll go to Fletcher.
It's confusing.
I know. I'm just trying to mix it up so that the same person doesn't speak.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Tom Goddard for his service to the town. He's put in many tireless hours, and I hope he enjoys his retirement. He deserves it. As far as what the select board can do about the fire department, obviously we have to start implementing some of the recommendations in the AP Triton report. I found the idea of a strategic plan to be one of the, that was like basically the first recommendation. There is some low-hanging fruit that we can implement as well. I do have to mention that because we are a town manager town instead of a select board run town, a lot of those decisions are going to be put on Karen's shoulders. So the best thing that the select board can do is help Karen, support Karen to make the best decisions that she can make on top of all of the other work that she is also doing.
Fletcher.
I think also from the report, one of the things that the report made clear is there's too much on the fire chief's plate. He's also the town health officer, he's also the emergency management person, and the report made it clear that Tom's been juggling those balls and getting away with it, but you bring somebody new in and it's going to be more than they can handle. So I think the first thing that would need to be done is to look at restructuring the job so that whoever ends up as the fire chief has a job that they can do, that they can manage without getting overwhelmed.
Great. Do we have any questions from the floor?
Can I
Bryce.
follow up on that too?
Mike Rowicki wants to weigh in on, do you mind, actually, because I called Bryce and then, would you mind sitting over there and then I can,
I'd love to.
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
yeah, please, Mike Rowicki, please find a seat. Bryce.
Oh, I had a similar related question because we're not only losing our fire chief, but we're also losing our road foreman and, another Jason Newton, a member of the road crew. So, with mud season, we all know what's about to happen. And, is there a plan in place or what's everybody's thoughts on what we should be doing?
So we have a question from the floor about not only are we losing our fire chief, but the road foreman as well, and is there a plan? Fletcher has the mic, so I'm going to ask you to start.
Seems like we have a mud season about every 2 weeks. Personnel issues are a huge problem throughout the whole town structure, frankly. Getting and keeping people. Bryce, you want to be on the road crew? All joking aside, that's the first thing you do is try to round up the people who are willing to do the work.
Well, and who know the town, I guess, too, you know? Then who know, hey, that's always a wet spot, you know,
Yeah,
dump
it's
an
good.
extra thing of gravel there.
It's good to know the town and it's good to know how to manage the equipment. So,
Yeah.
I think that it's like any hiring process. You put it out there and you round up whoever you can. If you don't get enough applicants, just sit back and think about what am I doing wrong and try to retool.
Do you want to pass it to Frank and then we'll end with Eileen?
Well, hopefully we're gonna be all set for this mud season, because I think they're gonna be there through this mud season, but, somebody that's, working there is either gonna have to learn the job, or they're gonna have to advertise and, try to, put out for a grader operator, and hopefully somebody will apply.
Eileen, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, we're definitely losing a lot of wealth of knowledge and expertise in the town of Putney this year. Brian Harlow has graciously said that he would not retire until after plowing season and mud season, so thank you for that. As far as a long-term plan, I know I mentioned sharing of services earlier. This is another place where we potentially can do that, either by sharing equipment with other towns or by sharing personnel.
Great. I'm looking to see if there's any hands online. I don't see any electronic hands. Mike Verwicki, did you want to ask a question?
Sure, in the same vein here, what's happening in Putney is happening statewide.
Oops,
I'm gonna start running the mic.
don't go beyond these speakers, we may
Okay.
have feedback. That's what one of our problems we're concerned
All
about.
right, can you hear me?
I don't know, if.
Yep.
Do you,
We'll try it.
Good.
Let's
Okay,
see.
let's try it.
It's with my luck, anything I touch is gonna squeal, but
Is this for the broadcast?
it is being broadcast.
I mean, is this for the broadcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the Zoom.
It's also, I think
Yeah,
people
it's
in
for the
the room
Zoom.
are having easier.
They're
Okay,
having a hard time
sure.
hearing.
What I wanted to say is what's happening in Putney is happening across the state. It's happening with EMS, it's happening with fire, it's happening with police. So at some point, the decision's gonna have to be made by our legislative body here, with help of the legislature in Montpelier. What do we do next? Do we start to regionalize EMS, fire, police? And that's gonna cost money. We just don't have the volunteers. Fewer and fewer people work in town, so they can't take call during the day. So my question is, would you favor regionalization of fire, police, EMS?
Great. Let us give it to Eileen.
I do favor sharing of services amongst towns. As many of you may or may not know, Vermont has an extremely weak, almost non-existent county system. The only thing that the county does in effect is run the sheriff's office and the county courthouses. In other states, including New Hampshire, they run a lot more than that. I don't think that I would be in favor of a regionalization that did not include towns that were similarly equipped and geographically the same. There's issues with, there's mountainous areas will get more snow, places that are next to the river might get more flooding. Those regionalizations I don't think would work. And I would prefer that it be done from the town's a town's choice to regionalize itself rather than having the state come down and tell us which regions will now be regions.
Fletcher.
No offense, Mike, but one of the scariest lines you can hear is, "I'm from Montpelier and I'm here to help." I think it breaks, regionalization, well, sheriffs are county, they're countywide. The state police, I was talking to Greg a few weeks ago about when he had the cats cut off the cars that were in his lot, and he said somebody saw it happening and called him and said, "There's somebody in your yard cutting the catalytic converters off the bottom of the cars." And he called the state police, and they told him they'd be here in about 2 hours. There's a regional entity that, it's not doing us much good. Fire, response times to get to an incident or get EMTs out to somebody who needs, it's still going to be a matter of the equipment being local, or at least being close enough to local. As to running a fire station, if you're still relying on volunteers to show up, whether the dispatch isn't mutual aid a regional dispatch system in effect anyway. I'm not quite sure what just that concept alone adds to the solution of the problem.
Frank?
Yes, I think it's going to be hard to combine services for fire department and highway departments. Everybody's in the same boat. To put more burden on another department to try to come help, they all got their own stuff to worry about. So if somebody else has to come start helping out another town, it's just going to make them tired out more, and people are going to quit or get done because they don't want the pressure.
Great, thank you. We have a question, Doug Grant. Are you able to unmute yourself?
I did. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm having a terrible time hearing you, so please put the mic next to your chin or just slightly under your chin. Everybody, without exception. It's terrible audio, but that's not my question. The town plan talks about making the village walkable, conducive for walking. And then I walk on Main Street a lot. I go both directions every day. And it's terribly noisy. And one solution I came up with is to put a 4-way stop or a roundabout down by the co-op. Take out that triangle, get rid of it, because we don't need it anymore for Sound View. They're gone. You don't need that fast approach onto Main Street for the big rigs. And if somebody does have a big rig in there, they should slow down, put a stop sign in there. So what I'd like to know from Eileen and Fletcher and Frank is, have you given any thought to how to slow down traffic and make it a walkable street?
Fletcher, do you want to start with that?
I have, and I've been walking a good bit myself and thinking about what, particularly with the proposal of putting a sidewalk down Old Depot Road, which I live on Old Depot Road, but the sidewalk wouldn't get to my house, which I am not sure is much of it creates much of a walkable space. But the sidewalk down Main Street is great for what it does. The problem, and Doug was on the walk the other morning with me, that I also went on, it's getting across Route 5 that's the problem. If you can get to the side of the street that has the sidewalk on it, you can have a nice walk down Main Street. And Doug's right, one of the biggest problems is that intersection in front of Rod's. That's a mess there. I was just talking to Ted Dodd when we were coming in about it, and about the idea of a rotary there, and which has some appeal. It might slow down big trucks, but the problem with a rotary, if you're a pedestrian, is that rotaries designed to keep things moving, and pedestrians are designed to make things stop. So, I'm not sure, I mean, really, the proposal that came up in the Old Depot Road sidewalk proposal that I thought was the most useful was a crosswalk with that you can push a button on the pole and it'll start flashing a light. Get people to slow down so you can actually get across the street. I think that's probably the single biggest safety thing we could do down at this end of town. I think people are usually pretty well behaved by the time they get up to the general store, but they definitely roll into town headed north on Route 5 at a pretty good clip.
You want to pass it to Frank?
I hadn't never given it much thought, but I think a crosswalk with a blinking light would be the place to start. I don't think, I don't know if the roundabout would be a good answer, but I guess that's about it.
Great. Eileen, what are you thinking about slowing traffic?
Well, we just did complete a scoping study, which is the walk that Fletcher was talking about, to put mainly the whole idea that started that study was to get a crosswalk across Route 5. Route 5 is a state highway. I'm going to blame the state again. They move at the pace of glaciers whenever something about their roads comes up. And they are also very, very strict about modifications to their road. So the idea of a roundabout did come up. I am cautiously in favor of doing something with that intersection. Unfortunately, it's not Putney's decision on what would go there or even when. We are, I believe, Karen has already opened up talks with V-Trans about doing a study for that intersection. So I believe that's in the works. I don't know how long, I don't know how fast V-Trans will work on that. But in the meantime, we are trying to go ahead with putting sidewalks in places that make sense, like right in front of the library to the banks with a walkway to Old Depot Road to try to make it safe for people who live on that side of the street to come to the existing sidewalk network.
Great, thank you. Is there another question from the floor? I see there's one on Zoom. I don't see any hands here, so.
Another one, but go to Zoom first.
I have Martha Meigs.
It's Meg, and I'm a former Landmark student who now lives in town. I love how walkable it is, but the place that I find is really hard to cross. I live where Barry Shaw works, and I'm forever having trouble crossing the street at the post office because traffic doesn't slow down. I think we really need a crosswalk there because the general store is so far from the post office, and so is the next crosswalk. How would you go about changing that?
Crosswalk by the post office. And Eileen has the mic. Why don't you keep it?
I totally agree. I think there should be a crosswalk there. I mentioned the state before. The state has a hang-up about putting a sidewalk to what they believe is nowhere. Now I understand that there is parking on that side of the road, so it's not nowhere to us, but they're very, very strict about that.
Did you mean to say crosswalk?
Crosswalk, I'm sorry. But I have noticed that V-Trans can be persuaded to put sidewalks that essentially go nowhere. There's one on sidewalks, walkways, crosswalks, sorry. I have the sidewalk policy on my mind because we've been dealing with it. So crosswalks. There's one on Marlboro Road going towards the old Chelsea Diner, that there's a sidewalk on one side and there's nothing on the other side. That's a state road. There's also one next to the retreat farm. So I know that they can do it. And whether we can do it, that remains to be seen. But that's, now that I know that they have done it in the past, we have pictures, we have evidence. So hopefully we can do more on that road to increase pedestrian safety.
Should we just pass it down the line, Fletcher? Crosswalks, post office.
Okay, I think crosswalks are a great idea. One thing that came up in the discussions about getting a crosswalk to get over to Old Depot Road from the library was that when they put in a crosswalk, they want to take out 3 parking spaces. Well, 2 or 3, which seemed a little extreme to me, but they said, no, you gotta have it marked out so that you can't park within 20 feet either side of the crosswalk. So it's, you know, town went to a great deal of expense putting in all that curbing and figuring out all the parking spaces up and down Main Street. And now it seems like if we want to make it safe enough to get across Main Street, we're going to lose all the parking. So I'm not entirely sure how to solve that problem. It seems to me that just marking out crosswalks, though, is a pretty good idea because, you know, hopefully people are aware of the fact that if a pedestrian's in a marked crosswalk, they have the right of way. But, you know, there's laws and there's physics, and they don't necessarily always agree.
Frank, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I would just try to mark it out and maybe put up a sign and hope that maybe people will slow down and stop. I know sometimes people stop and let people cross the road, but
Right. It's a tough spot.
yeah.
Watch out.
Yep.
Bryce, you had your hand up, so is there anybody in the room who hasn't spoken yet? Somebody go to Bryce? Oh, you haven't spoken.
Yeah, I'm curious. It sounds like the crosswalk initiative is getting mucked up by the state, right?
Or the feds.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Joe Brown. It sounds an awful lot to me like the crosswalk initiative is getting mucked up by the state. My question, it might be a little racy, but what's the state gonna do if we just put a crosswalk in?
All right, let's see, why don't we start with Fletcher?
I'm pretty sure they'll take offense.
But if a pedestrian's making across the road in the meantime.
The problem that has already been noted is that Route 5 is a state highway.
Okay.
So they get to call the shots there. And it's not like they are intentionally mucking up every bright idea we come up with. It's just that their rules are so elaborate about all of these things. I mean, how long did it take to just get that sidewalk in down Main Street? I mean, I used to stop by the town hall to do title searches. There'd be the whole conference table in that main area would be full of people from V-Trans and Cynthia Stoddard and the road crew, and it was amazing. And it went on for months and months. I think it took a couple of years just to get the basic planning done because of all the requirements that had to be met. So, I mean, that's sort of what you're up against, but it's also, to an extent, the world we live in now. You know, we are pretty much surrounded by rules and regulations, and they're going to define what we can do. I suppose if they don't like it, they'll come tear it out.
Just in the interest of time, because I have a couple of hands up here and then there's 2 hands on the floor, does anybody want to weigh into this, or can I take a question from Zoom? Take a question. Swift River.
Swift.
Hi, I'm Swift Everty. I am the co-chair of the Equity Inclusion Advisory Committee and have been for a few years on that committee, and deeply proud of the work that the current select board has been doing on furthering diversity, inclusion, justice in our town, and it feels like we're just getting started always. And my question to each of you is what excites you about that work, about equity, inclusion, and justice, and what do you bring to the table as an individual, as part of the wider select board in furthering this work?
Why don't we start with Frank on that, and then we'll just go down the line?
I guess I would have to look more into that, and I would have to think if people had separate questions about that. I would have to think about that a little bit. It would have to be more of a question on it.
Fletcher?
Well, I a little bit agree with Frank. It's a pretty open-ended question, Swift. You know, I'm hugely in favor of both equity and inclusion. And that's always been a mainstay of my practice in my professional, both my professional and my public service life. So I don't know, without specifics, I don't know what to say, but I'm in favor of both.
Eileen?
I think at the heart of it, as far as the select board is concerned, that the major goal for me anyway is to ensure that everyone has feels like they have a voice at the table, and whatever we can do to increase accessibility or make the select board a less scary place to speak up, because I do know that there are people who simply don't want to go to meetings and speak up because it is fairly intimidating to speak to a table of 5 individuals and be recorded on BCTV. So whatever we can do to increase engagement by the public in whatever way possible, that's my overriding interest. As far as what I bring to the table, I work at the town of Brattleboro's DEI committee, so I can bring a lot of those ideas back to the town. I'm also part of the Ideal Cohort, which is a statewide diversity, equity, inclusion initiative. So I've been bringing those ideas back as well.
I have 2 hands that I've seen on the floor. Both people have spoken before. Is there anybody here who hasn't spoken? Let's give it to Bryce, and then we'll go back to Zoom, and then we'll go to Mike Nowicki.
See how this works. One question I had was, now that the paper mill is closing, I know that there are several brown sites, that are contaminated that we haven't dealt with. I don't know if we've asked the state for help, but now that the paper mill is closing, that's another larger contaminated place, as well as a huge area that could be developed eventually. So I was wondering, if you were elected to select board, what your priority of trying to clean up the brown sites that are physically in downtown would be.
Let's give it to Eileen, and then go down. Liz?
Yeah, I view that site as a huge liability, and also a huge opportunity for regrowth in the downtown. There's still that building, and those buildings and the property are still owned by Soundview. So to some extent, whatever we end up doing with that area would have to come from them. I'm not sure what their plans are. So I think it's a little too early to say exactly what we would do with those spots. To be honest, I'm not sure whose responsibility it is to clean up those brown sites. I feel like it might be the state, just because they also dealt with the oil spill. Basically, they took over. So that's probably where that stands right now. I expect that the company would be responsible for part of that, but I really don't know.
Fletcher?
Well, I did have a certain amount of involvement some years ago up in Saxton's River with the Sunoco station up there that after that got closed up. And that was, if you remember that, it's no surprise that there were a lot of hydrocarbons in the ground there. The end result of that, and I don't know that Sandry had to foot a lot of the bill on that. The feds did pretty much take over, and there were grants for the cleanup. The property became usable again in a sense. It's now a little pocket park, which is a nice addition to the community, but it's not on the tax roll anymore. So, I mean, one of the problems with that Soundview building is it's paying taxes right now. So if you're gonna decommission it, and what happens down the hill there and how that gets capped, it's a heck of a process, and that again is a multi-year undertaking. But there was federal money to put into it, so Rockingham didn't end up absorbing the whole hit.
Frank, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I don't know, something like that, I don't know where you would start and I don't know where you would end. So I think it comes down to the property owners, and if someone was to buy the property from the current property owners, then, I think it would rely on them to take care of it. Because it could cost a lot of money to do something like that.
Great, thank you. We have a hand up online, Doug. I don't see anybody who hasn't spoken, so I'm going to go to Doug.
Thank you for your answer earlier. It was a good discussion about sidewalks, but my question wasn't about sidewalks. My question was about noise and slowing traffic down by virtue of, or by the way of putting in a four-way stop or a roundabout. Now, the conversation kind of went around roundabouts and sidewalks, but I want to know about a four-way stop to stop the traffic and modify that triangle so you have a good, safe place to cross, at least on 3 of those crossings. You wouldn't want to cross Putney Landing because it's coming right off the freeway, but the other 3 sides of that intersection could have stop signs. And I just want to say that Bevel's Falls and Brattleboro have stop signs and stoplights, and it's on Route 5, and it's called Main Street. So I'm not asking for a response. I just want to tell you, I heard what you said, and you didn't hear what I said. So thank you very much.
Okay, so we don't require an answer to that. Thank you for
I
the
do have an answer though.
Okay.
So the actual answer to your question is that Putney would have to take over that section of Route 5 in order to do anything right now. If we were to do that, we would take over the maintenance, we would take over the paving. It would be a pretty sizable expense for the town. But if we did do that, we could put in all sorts of traffic calming, including stop signs, roundabouts, curvy, whatever those things are, to make the cars go around, speed bumps, bike lanes, all that. We could do that much more, not instantaneously, but much more quickly than the state will ever get to it.
Great. Anybody else want to add a comment? All right, Mike Merwicki, thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Can we get him on mic? These mics are so hot. Turns out if you touch them, they begin to sing. I don't want to ask too many questions.
Thank you. Just to follow back to the Main Street Route 5 piece, the challenge, as people have said, is that it's a state highway, even though it's on Main Street. So as it is right now, we still have to adhere to the V-Trans requirements. I've been working on that at the State House, and we're able to pass something out of the House this year in the transportation bill that would open up that process and make it more flexible. It's going over to the Senate. We hope they pass it without changing it. But this has been a concern we've been looking at, and we want to try and make it more flexible because we don't want to have to take over the expense, as Eileen said. That would be huge to the town to take over just that stretch of road. The other piece I wanted to share about Putney Paper, I've been working with Congresswoman Ballant's office, and we're hoping to have a forum at some point in time so she can share what the federal government might be able to do to help both with development and cleanup, because The challenge is we don't know what that's going to cost to make it a viable site again, so stay tuned for that.
Great. Any questions? I don't see any on Zoom. Any more questions from the floor? It's about 7:17, 7:18. So, yes, Candace.
Again, I just am amazed at how little I know. I didn't even know that Putney had zones. Could you talk about what kind of zones, when you talk about the zoning committee or whatever? Where are the zones?
Let's see, I think it's Fletcher's time to start.
Well, if you stop by my office, I'll pull up the zoning map. I mean, Putney ranges from the downtown zone, which is theoretically where you have compact housing, a mix of residence and business, and you try to keep it all in a relatively confined space. There's also a historic district, but that's sort of an overlay to the, so you have a downtown area, and then as you proceed out from there, you get into different zones that have different requirements, usually about lot size and access. So you go through from, I don't know what the minimum lot size in downtown is, probably half acre at most. Less than half acre now. And then you'll go to 1 acre, 5 acre, 10 acre, and up on the hills, Putney has a conservation zone, which is 25 acres. So up by where Bryce lives, you have 25 acre minimum lot sizes. And you walk across the street into Westminster and you're in a 5 acre zone. So, what Westminster does is their business, I guess. But it's really all about lot size and access. So, and the different zones are, the conservation zones are designed to make it so they can't be built up. So that's sort of the other end of the spectrum from the downtown zone.
Do you want to give it to Frank to see? Frank, do you want to add anything about zoning in Putney?
I don't think so. I think Fletcher described it well.
Great. Eileen, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so the zoning maps are online. They're also, you can get them at the town hall. What Fletcher outlined is basically, that's the way that it works. I just wanted to add that the zoning bylaws and the zones are informed by the town plan. So the reason for having them, and so I know I'm supposed to bring them closer, but I'm getting a feedback. The reason for having them is to try to drive those initiatives that are in the town plan in the areas that you want. So for instance, the conservation areas, we want to keep those areas relatively wild for wildlife and other and for carbon sequestration and other things. And we want to drive a lot of our development into the downtown to make it walkable and bikeable and compact. So those zones are instrumental to that growth, the way that we want it to grow. So they're actually intertwined in a fascinating way that I could go on for hours.
He's a policy geek. Yeah, great. Any questions coming from, oh, great, in the back. Can we get a mic? Sorry, thank you. Laura, into the back to the left. If you could just say your name, please.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Wilkins, and sorry I arrived late, but I heard equity mentioned, and I know that there's some committee about equity in Putney, and I think a lot of people confuse equity with equality. Like equal opportunity used to be the standard that was set and what we strive for. Now it's about equity, so I'm wondering, what to you is the difference between equity? Why is it equity now? Why not equal opportunity?
Okay, let's get the mic back and we will start with, who hasn't started in a round first? Is it your turn again, Frank, to start? The difference between equity and equality. What are your thoughts?
I don't really, I'd have to think about that question a little bit more and understand it a little bit better to answer better to that.
And we'll just go right down the line.
Well, you're right. Equity and equality are not the same. I mean, it's, well, curb cuts, to get up on a sidewalk. If everybody's treated equally, you just have a curb. And the fact that you're in a wheelchair, so what? That's your problem. I mean, equity is more looking at where the circumstances of the individual and seeing if we can come up with ways to make it so that the individual can have the same opportunity for self-realization as somebody who has other circumstances. It's to try and level the playing field more than just equal. Well, your opportunity to get up on that sidewalk is the same as mine. It's not my fault if you're in a wheelchair. That's part of the problem. So
Wheelchair, equal opportunity, equal access.
well, that's when you're creating equity. That's what curb cuts are about. That's what makes it so that the person in the wheelchair has as much of an opportunity to get up on the sidewalk as I do when I just step up onto it. That's probably the simplest metaphor I could come up with.
And Eileen, you want to give us your perspective?
Yeah, so there's a visual that I like to use when explaining equality versus equity, and that is of three people, one a small child, one a elderly person who's having mobility issues, and one who is a tall, fit, young person, and they all get a bike. But the bike is the same size, it has the same number of wheels, it has the same number of gears, and those three people cannot ride that bike. So that's equality. Equity is when you change that bike so that everyone in that group can ride a bike.
Do we have another question? And we're about to wrap up. It's about almost 7:30, and that's when this meeting is ending. Anybody who hasn't spoken on the floor? Anybody who hasn't spoken on Zoom? Well, thank you. Oh, great, Claire.
Comment about our wonderful fire chief retiring.
Good.
According to the.
We're going to give you the mic, Claire, to talk about Tom Goddard.
About the fire chief and his retirement. According to the newspaper, he took on many, many, many jobs that I think don't have anything to do with being fire chief. So somebody stepping into the job as fire chief, it seems to me, wouldn't have to take on all Tom Goddard's other wonderful, the wonderful things he's been doing in all these other areas around town. Wouldn't that make it easier for somebody else to take that job?
And I think there was a point made earlier that Karen is going to be, am I wrong about that? That she's going to be one of the people who's trying to figure out, Eileen, it looks like you have an answer to that question.
I have an answer.
Yeah. And this will be our last question, so we'll just hear from our candidates on this.
Yeah, first of all, that Reformer article was a travesty. I was very disappointed to see it, to conflate Tom Goddard's excellent service to the town for all these years with that report. It was unfair. He should have, he deserved an article commending his service and congratulating him on his retirement. That said, there are some things that, like the occupancy, fire inspections, I believe, was taken over by the town in the hopes of getting some revenue from it. It turned out we're not getting any revenue from that, so it's going back to the state. So that's one piece that we will no longer need to do. I believe Karen is taking on a couple of the other duties in the interim to get us past the hump. So theoretically, the new fire chief would just be the fire chief.
which is a job in itself.
Great, thank you. Fletcher, would you like to add anything?
I think Claire's observation is correct, and I said that earlier just on the basis of the report, that there's just too much on his plate. And finding somebody to step in, it's a typical problem when somebody has grown with the job, or the job has exploded around them, and Tom got good at juggling balls, but somebody else walking in cold is not going to be able to pick up all those balls.
Frank, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, I think what they've said is correct. I also think back, when he started fire chief, there was a lot less calls, there was a lot less going on. And so, it was a little bit easier for him. And over the years, everything has grown so much. And there's a lot more. So all them things just kind of escalated.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for coming out. I'd love to give a round of applause for our 3 candidates. Thank you for running for office, and for running for Putney. And thank you everybody for coming out this evening with great questions, and those of you online. And vote on March 5th, and come to town meeting. Where all the people are 3-dimensional.